So Contender Series for the 2024 season is going to be kicking off next week, and before the season begins, I wanted to talk about the top 10 fights that I am most looking forward to before the season begins. And these are fights that I think are guaranteed to be bangers. I think they're guaranteed to be good fights. So as the season does kind of progress along, these are fights that, in my opinion, you should definitely have marked down as fights that are going to be very good. Now, with that being said, I do think that overall this whole season is probably going to be the best season we have ever seen. I think it probably is the highest level season we have ever seen, because typically we do see a lot of Contender Series guys get signed and then not really make it to the second or the third contract. I think that there is a lot of fighters on the show that could potentially be ranked contenders, that could potentially be guys that fight in the top 25 spots, or maybe even some potential champions out of the season of the Contender Series. It's a very high level season, and I will be doing my predictions for every single week. I actually already have my prediction article out on the WeWantPicks.com website, and if you do want to view that, it is $10 per month for the WeWantPicks.com membership, which you do get access to that. But everything else, We Want Picks, there's so much there. You probably know about it by now, but if you do sign up using my code ARTEM, you will get a 3-day free trial, and it does help out my channel significantly. Aside from that though, of course, I will be uploading my prediction videos to my channel, ARTEM MMA, and also will be uploading prediction videos to the We Want Picks YouTube channel as well. So there's going to be multiple different ways that you can access my predictions for this season, and I'm very much looking forward to it. The way that I have my list in order is actually from chronological order from week 1 to 10. So the first fights that I'm going to talk about are coming up pretty soon, and the last fight that I'm going to be talking about is actually on week number 9. If you think that I've missed out a fight, let me know in the comments, but let's start it off with what is the first fight on my list, but also happens to be the first fight of the season in week number 1, taking place next Tuesday at the time that I upload this video. Antoine Ho fighting against Lorna Kavanagh at flyweight. Two very young, exciting prospects. Both of these two are very good. It is kind of a shame that they are fighting against each other, because usually that does mean that one of them is going to cancel each other out. So one of them's going to win, and then the other one is going to have to spend a little bit more time on the regional scene. But nonetheless, it's going to be a banger, and that's what this video is about. Lorna Kavanagh is a very crisp boxer. He's very, very fast with good counter-striking and pretty smooth footwork as well. And Antoine Ho is the same. They're both very, very good strikers. They're both very fast. You could make an argument on who's faster, but I think that Kavanagh has that speed advantage. But he's going to have to worry about Antoine Ho kind of mixing in some grappling as well, and I do think that this is a matchup which could get very scrappy on the feet if we do see the grappling cancel out and they both decide to box and stand and trade in the middle of the octagon for the fight. Now, being flyweights, that typically isn't really what we see, because flyweights are some of the most technical strikers, or most technical fighters in MMA, because they are a lot smaller and a lot faster. But I do think that this fight does have all of the makings to be a classic and to be a banger. My prediction for the fight, which I will break down a lot more in depth next by the time on the next week's card, is Lorna Kavanagh winning a decision. I think that this is going to be 15 minutes of action, and I think it's going to be a very enjoyable fight. Another one is also on week number 1. We have Ding Ming fighting against Islam Dulatov. And I've made it no secret, I'm a fan of Ding Ming, I really am. He is a guy from China that I have really kind of had my eye on for quite a while now, actually. Now, he is just fun, and the reason why I like him so much is just because he fights so often. In 2022, I believe he fought like 7 times in 2022. That's the worst counting you've probably ever seen, but he's fought a lot, and he fights on average 4 to 5 times a year. He has bangers out there, like his fight against Abdul-Malik can be found somewhat easily, and this is a great fight to watch because Abdul-Malik has actually now made himself out to be a very good prospect to keep your eye out for as well. Lots of wins by KO there, and Ming Ding was able to beat him. Both of those guys were in a great scrap, and I think that that fight could actually kind of be what this one could be as well. But the problem is, he's fighting against Islam Dulatov, who many people regard as the best welterweight prospect on the planet that's not signed to any major organization. And they're probably right. He does have a listing of 6'6" on his Tapology profile, but I do think he might just be a little bit shorter, as other sources say that he's not that tall. But Nonetheless, he is still a very long and rangy guy. He was taller significantly over John Pylagos, who was 6'3", and he used his range very well, like he does in every single one of his fights. Islam Dulatov fights behind a jab and straight shots with his boxing, and also with his kicks as well. He does like to keep that range, and he does do range management very, very well. He can grapple, and he's got a lot of wins by submission as well, but most of the time he's trying to get that win by knockout on the feet. Ding Ming is going to make it interesting because from most fights that I've seen of Ding Ming, he is a high volume kickboxer. He's not scared to crash forward and engage in the pocket. And I think that this could just kind of be an absolute banger if the fight does last longer than a round. If the fight extends, I think that we could be in for an all-time war here. But I think that either way, there is a very good chance that someone is going to get finished in the first round and maybe the second round. And although I am a big fan of Ding Ming, I think that's a very tough matchup for him overall, as Islam Dulatov truly is an elite prospect at 170 pounds, which is why I do think that he's probably going to find a knockout win in this matchup. But this is a fight I'm really looking forward to. Another one, this is on week 3, is Jack Duffy fighting against Jose Ochoa. It is going to be at flyweight. Flyweights are always all action, they're always very fun, and this is a fight between two finishers, and one of them just happens to be from a gym which produces some of the most exciting fighters on the planet, and that happens to be Shooterbox Diego Lima. Jose Ochoa, he is another Charles Oliveira minion. That is a term that I do like to use quite a lot for fighters like Daniel Santos. Felipe dos Santos, Alves Brenner also could be put in that category as well. And the way that he fights is on the feet. He's very, very aggressive with that classic shooter box Muay Thai style. But more importantly, he's actually a lights-out grappler. And that's what's going to make it interesting against Jack Duffy, because Jack Duffy is also a pretty lights-out grappler. And I think that both of these guys are really going to go to war against each other, not only on the feet, but I think that you could see a lot of grappling, transitions, and reversals as well throughout the entire fight. Now, I don't actually have an official pick right now, but I am kind of leaning the aggressiveness of the Ochoa shooter box style that he does have, but I think that nonetheless this is going to be a fantastic fight, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it. And now we have a fight which I think is going to be talked about a lot over the next few weeks. It is Austin Bashi fighting against Tommy McMillan. Austin Bashi has been regarded as the best prospect out of the USA right now, and I don't think that you really could be wrong by saying that. He is 12-0, he's fought at bantamweight and featherweight, and he does hold some very good wins. You know, this is a guy that defeated Pipe Vargas, and I say multiple times that Pipe Vargas, all of his losses are to elite competition who have gone on to do something. He beat Askar as well, who is a solid guy from the regional scene who has good wins and also has losses to elite competition, and also just has wins over guys with decent records as well. He does have a lot of finishes recently over fighters that did accept fights against him on short notice, but nonetheless he did manage to find all of that success. Austin Bashi is a dangerous wrestler, and that is how he does win most of his fights, is using his wrestling and getting the takedowns. I do find it very odd though that he's going to be fighting at this fight at 145 pounds. He is listed at 5'3", but I do think he's a little bit taller. I think he is 5'6", but nonetheless, he is a very small featherweight, and I do think he's going to look very small in there against a guy like Tommy McMillan, who is a legitimate 5'11" featherweight with a lot of power on the feet and also submission ability on the ground. The problem with Tommy McMillan is that I have struggled to find some tape on him, but I do know that you can find it on, I believe it's called Triller TV. But from what I've seen out of Tommy McMillan so far, which is a lot of highlights, is that this is kind of going to be a pretty tough test for Austin Bashi if he can't manage to get the takedowns. I did want to highlight this one, as this is probably going to be one of the highest level fights of the season, and I think it's definitely one to keep an eye out for. And if Austin Bashi can pass this test, I think he's going to go on and find a lot of success in the UFC. But I'm not too confident so far, but I am still leaning on Bashi right now. Igor Cavalcanti is going to be fighting against Seok Hyun Kyo, and banger, it's just a banger because Igor Cavalcanti has so much power on the feet, so much finishing ability on the feet, and fortunately for him, Seok Kung Ko is going to match that aggression. This is a guy that also likes to stand and trade in the pocket. He is also a guy that wants to stand and bang. Igor Cavalcanti has been on an absolute tear right now, albeit not really against UFC level competition. But if you look at his, if you just look at his record, I mean, that's what, like 5 wins in a row in like a minute and 12 seconds and less. I mean, you just don't really see that all too much. This is a guy that is going to go out there and use that boxing and try and find a finish. And he has an opponent here that is going to also try and lead the dance against him. It's guaranteed to be a banger. Someone's getting finished in the first round. Unfortunately for Seok Kung Ko, I do think it probably is him. But nonetheless, this is definitely a fight to keep your eye out for, taking place at welterweight. And it is going to be, someone's getting knocked out. Someone's getting knocked out. It's going to be good. Yusri Belgari fights against Anvarbek Danielbekov, and I do understand that a lot of people will probably question my decision to place him in this list because Yusri Belgari's fight last season against Marco Tulio, let's be honest, it wasn't very good. It was one of the more boring fights of the season, I guess, and Marco Tulio was able to beat Yusri Belgari, but since then, Belgari's found success. He's got a couple of wins by finish recently, well, 1 win by finish, 1 win by decision, and he's back. If you guys don't know, Yusri Belgari is a training partner and friend of Alex Pereira, but not only that, he is a man that has actually been in the ring with Alex Pereira in kickboxing. I believe he has a win over him. No, he's 0-2. No, he's not. He's 1-2 against Alex Pereira, and also 0-2, I believe, to Israel Adesanya as well. But nonetheless, an elite striker, a guy that does hold good wins. I mean, that win over Jason Wilness is a pretty legendary win, and he has been a glory kickboxer up until about, what, like 2021? And now he is committed to MMA. He has found a lot of mixed success, found some success, found some not success, but nonetheless, he is a very interesting striker. Looking at him, though, he has a very, very odd striking style. Like, it is very weird. I've actually talked about this with multiple different people now, and it doesn't really translate to MMA all that well. You know, you look at him, and he is 6'5", and he definitely is 6'5", but he kind of has, like, his chin, like, way forward, and, like, his defense is just kind of moving that forwards and backwards, kind of like Alex Pereira, but a lot more different. It's really hard to explain, but you'll understand what I mean if you do watch him fight. His opponent, Anvarbek Danielbekov, despite what a lot of people might assume, is a striker as well. It is going to be a striker versus striker matchup, and that's why I like it so much. Now, of course, the better wrestler in the matchup is going to be Anvarbek. He is a guy that has been doing MMA for a significantly longer period of time, but he's going to be out there and trying to find the finish, because that's just what he does. 8 wins by KO. All of his wins are by finish by KO, as I literally just said a second ago, but he's a guy that's going to want to go out there and strike with Yusri Belgari. Now, in this matchup, we might see some wrestling. We don't typically see that out of Anvarbek, and he actually is a pretty unpolished striker that can still somewhat be sloppy, but nonetheless, it's going to be good. I have kind of been leaning the Belgari side, but definitely do not lock any prediction in there from me for this card, because this one is on week number 5, and I will break down the card more in detail when that time rolls around. Now we have 2 guys that are going to try and get knockouts. It is Ota Tanzalov fighting against Josias Musasa, also on that week number 5 card, so that's going to be a good one. 2 bantamweights, one of them is going to be significantly bigger than the other one, because Ota Tanzalov is probably one of the taller bantamweights we've seen. 5'11", and looking at that photo, you can tell he is not a small bantamweight at all. Now, he does go out there and find a lot of knockouts. A lot of them have been coming a little bit later into fights, but he is a very dynamic striker. Wins by spinning back kick and by jumping switch kick. Not that many people probably have finishes in those 2 different ways in their career. Very much a guy that is going to want to find the finish on the feet, but he is now going to be taking on the KO wizard Josias Musasa, who also has all of his wins coming by knockout. 6 wins by KO, 1 win in the second round, 6 in the first, 1 in the second. He's been fighting for African Combat, which is African Knockout, sorry. African Knockout, if you're unfamiliar with it, is actually like the Ultimate Fighter, except in Africa and on Netflix. So if you wanted to watch the African Knockout TV show. It is on Netflix. I actually watched it last year. It was very interesting. But in this matchup, I think that we are going to see a pretty big size difference. Musasa's not the biggest bantamweight. Tanzilov is a gigantic bantamweight, but nonetheless, someone is probably going to get knocked out, and I think it's going to be a good fight. Kwang Lee fights against Aaron Toe, and this is another fight which is guaranteed to be good. Now, it is taking place in week number 6. I believe it's actually the only confirmed fight so far for week number 6, but if you guys didn't know, or maybe if you can't tell, I am from New Zealand, and Aaron Toe is, well, also from New Zealand as well. He won the Dan Hooker scholarship, where he managed to train with Jan Hooker, but I believe now he does train at City Kickboxing, and probably will be training at CKB in preparation for this matchup. Aaron Toe is a striker. He's a striker. He does like to mix it up on the feet, but he does have a lot of wins by knockout as well. He does have a lot of finishes. To be fair, though, he hasn't really fought the best competition. Now, that does come down to a lot of different things. Lack of being able to find opponents, and also just the lack of, in general, opponents here in New Zealand. It is a pretty small population, and MMA definitely isn't really the biggest sport. There is quite a lot of boxing going on, and a lot of kickboxing, especially like the King of the Ring series, which Navajo Sterling and Carlos Ulberg have both won before in the past. But yeah, MMA isn't really that big in New Zealand, is kind of what I'm trying to say there. But he fights against Kwang Lee, who is gigantic for bantamweight. I mean, if you do look at Aaron Toe versus Paul Oger, I think it's going to be similar, because Paul Oger is a massive bantamweight as well, and Kwang Lee is incredibly explosive. Like, in his fights against Tiao Tung, and I believe his more recent fight against Cody Peterson as well, he just kind of explodes, and that's really the way to explain it. He goes out there and he throws a combination with a lot of power, and he does manage to find knockouts in that way. He can wrestle as well, and I do genuinely believe in this fight he is going to have a pretty sizable size advantage over Aaron Toe. It's a pretty split even fight. Now, I really hate to do it, and a lot of people aren't going to like me for doing it, but I do think that this is a good matchup for Kwang Lee, because he's just absolutely gigantic for the weight class. But I think it's going to be a very, very fun fight nonetheless, and Aaron Toe has all of the power to find a finish as well. And now we have maybe the fight of the season, Luke Riley fighting against Kevin Vallejos. Now, Luke Riley, I don't think has ever been in a boring fight in his entire career, and my goodness, he makes his fights kind of like a sweaty watch, quote unquote, because, man, this guy can get hurt, you know, like his fight against Alexander Loof. I believe Alexander Loof knocked him down multiple times. I believe his fight against Callum Parker was the fight of the year for Cage Warriors in 2023, and Callum Parker knocked him down multiple times. I think Mateus Malta knocked him down as well. Like, this guy, he's getting hurt in his fights. He's getting put down, but it's a good win over Alexander Loof. And John D. Jesus is a former Bellator fighter who has actually given quite a few other fighters in Bellator pretty tough fights in the past. Has that win over Vladimir Prabchenko. But he's fighting now against Kevin Vallejos, and Kevin Vallejos, if you guys don't know, gave Gene Silva probably the toughest fight that he's had in the Contender Series UFC era of his career, where he actually won that first round against Gene Silva, but ended up losing the second and the third, because Gene Silva really then started to land big shots on him, and he started to fade, especially in that third round, when Gene Silva did start cracking him with some big shots, and actually kind of knocked out him on the feet, had him hurt in moments. But then after that, Vallejos has come back and looked good. He got a submission win, and then he knocked out a most recent opponent as well, 5 months ago, who was 6-0. This fight is guaranteed to be a banger. I think that this fight probably does take place on the feet. Luke Riley has shown throughout his entire career that he's got incredible takedown defense, but I do worry in this one here, although he does throw so much volume, it's kind of like a crazy amount of volume, he still is hittable. And he still has been knocked down multiple times, and now he's going to be taking on Kevin Vallejos, who, if you do pay really close attention to the matchup against Gene Silva, he showed very, very nice counterboxing. Like, it was very crisp counterboxing. It's definitely going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be a boxing fight, but at the moment, I kind of just don't necessarily love the hittableness, quote unquote, the hittableness of Luke Riley against the crisp counterboxing of Kevin Vallejos. So that's kind of where I am at in my prediction for this fight here. A lot of people disagree. There's a lot of talk about this fight as well. Like, I mean, a lot of people are talking about this fight on Twitter too. But I think it's going to come down to the high volume of Luke Riley versus the counter boxing on the inside of Kevin Vallejos, and it's going to be a banger. And now we have Artem Vakatov fighting against Islam Makhachev, fighting at light heavyweight. If you guys don't know who Artem Vakatov is, he is the guy who I named my channel. No, unfortunately he's not. He could be though. I could change my whole brand to be Artem Vakatov if he does make it to the UFC. But Artem Vakatov's name is Artem, and that kind of just guarantees the fact that you're going to win. The greatest fighter of all time is called Artem Lobov for a reason. So I just think that Vakatov, you know, he's got the name value, but more importantly, he's got the striking, and how does he have the striking? Against Alex Pereira in 2021, this is recent Alex Pereira, this is like UFC Alex Pereira pretty much. He went to a split decision, which he lost, which you could argue he won, and then again on the rematch, you could argue that he actually lost that fight, but they gave it to Alex Pereira. So, very interesting there, but if you actually go look through it, this guy is a man that has found so much success in kickboxing and in glory kickboxing. He does kind of have an interesting style that a lot of people are saying isn't going to translate to MMA all too well. I disagree. I actually think his striking style is going to translate to MMA very, very well, but he just has to get past Islam Makhachev, who is a guy that has fought at heavyweight in the past, and I'm just going to triple check. Has he fought at 205 recently? He has. Banger though, he's got to win at PFL Europe, so he somehow managed to get out of his PFL contract to get here. Don't really know too much about Islam Makhachev, I'm not going to lie. The main reason why I really do just have this fight in here is because it's Artem Vakatov, and I think that Vakatov's going to win. There's just nothing really on Islam Makhachev aside from his 10-second KO, but this fight is in week number 9, so I've got 2 months now to look into it and find Islam Makhachev tape. If you know where to get it, let me know in the comments. But that's it. That's my 10 fights that I'm very much looking forward to. Tomorrow, I'm going to upload the 10 fighters that you should check out, because I did exclude some people so I could put them as individuals on that list. And, yeah, let's kind of just look forward to the Contender Series, man. I'm so excited. I'm very much thinking that it's going to be the best Contender Series season that we have ever seen, and I think that there are going to be some future contenders out of this season, which typically you can't really say all too much. I'm looking forward to it. My Contender Series Week 1 prediction video will probably be out on Friday, I would say. Maybe a little bit earlier, just kind of depends, but I have done all of my research for Week 1 and 2 for my prediction, so we're all ready to go for that. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.